Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into one of the most incredible last stands of the Korean War, the Battle of Kapyong. Now, this isn't just some story about a battle. It's a story about facing absolutely impossible odds, about unbelievable courage, and about a desperate fight that really did change the course of the war.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. On one side, you have this tiny Commonwealth force, totally outnumbered, and trying to hold a critical valley. And on the other, a tidal wave of Chinese soldiers. The sheer mismatch in numbers is really the heart of this whole incredible story.
The entire defense, the whole thing, rested on the shoulders of just two forward battalions. You had the 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment and the 2nd Battalion Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. All told, maybe 1,400 soldiers. And who were they up against? Well, they were facing elements from two whole divisions of the Chinese People's Volunteer Army, the PVA. We're talking an estimated 20,000 soldiers. The odds were literally more than 10 to 1. So how on earth did a situation like this even happen? It all kicked off during China's massive spring offensive in April of 1951. You have to picture this, a colossal push by over 700,000 troops, and they all had one single goal in mind, to completely shatter the UN front line and capture the capital city, Seoul. And then, on the night of April 22nd, that attack hits. The UN lines, which had actually been pushing forward, were just suddenly broken. The advance immediately turned into this frantic retreat, with all the forces scrambling back to a new defensive line called the Kansas Line. Here's where it gets really bad. The South Korean 6th Division, which was holding the Kapyong Valley, just completely collapsed under the weight of the assault. Their retreat blew a massive, dangerous hole right in the UN line. And all of a sudden, that Kapyong Valley became a direct highway for the Chinese army to sweep around and outflank the entire UN force. So, someone had to plug that gap, and fast. That urgent job fell to the 27th British Commonwealth Brigade, and more specifically, it was the Australians of 3 RAR who were ordered to dig in and hold a critical piece of high ground, Hill 504. The Aussies were in for an absolutely chaotic and brutal night of fighting. See, under the cover of thousands of retreating soldiers, Chinese forces were able to sneak right into their positions, and they just started launching relentless wave attacks. By the time the sun came up, the entire battalion was completely cut off. They were running low on ammo, and they were forced to pull off this incredibly disciplined fighting withdrawal under constant fire. The situation was so desperate. The panic was real. 2 U.S. mortar companies and 2 engineer companies, they basically decided a breakthrough was about to happen, so they fled the battlefield on foot. They abandoned everything, their trucks, their mortars, all their vital equipment, just gone. And this quote, this just perfectly captures the Australians' mindset. A U.S. general gets the acting commander, Major Ben O'Dowd, on the radio. He thought the unit had been completely wiped out, just overrun. And O'Dowd's defiant reply became legendary. "I've got news for you. We're still here, and we're staying here." You'd think fighting off an entire army was enough, right? Well, it gets worse. The Australians then had to endure this horrifying friendly fire incident. A U.S. airstrike was called in, but the F-4U Corsair jets mistakenly dropped napalm right on top of their own trenches. But here's the thing. Despite all of that, the waves of attacks, the friendly fire, being totally surrounded, 3 RAR held their ground for 24 brutal hours. They took the sting out of that initial Chinese assault and inflicted hundreds of casualties before they were finally ordered to pull back. They had bought precious, precious time, but the battle for Kapyong was far from over. The Australians' heroic fight bought just enough time for the battle to shift. Now, the full, undivided attention of the Chinese attack was about to fall on the 2nd Battalion Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, who were now totally alone on the next hill over, Hill 677. You can really sum up their entire situation with this one single word: surrounded. The roughly 700 men of the 20 PPCLI were now completely, totally cut off, with Chinese forces controlling every inch of ground around them. There was no way in, and there was no way out.
And then, in this moment that sounds like it's straight out of a movie, their brigade commander flies over the battlefield in a tiny spotter plane. But he wasn't there to promise reinforcements. No, instead he broadcasts this grim message over a loudspeaker for every single one of them to hear. You are on your own. You are cut off. You have to fight this battle alone.
So what do you do when you hear that? Well, in response, the Canadian commander, Lieutenant Colonel James Stone, gets on the radio and gives his men a simple, unwavering order that would become legendary. No retreat, no surrender. Now, this forced them to use a tactic that is just almost unthinkable. Fire on own position. Yeah, it's a last-ditch, basically suicidal move. It means you're calling for artillery to completely obliterate your own location, just hoping you can wipe out the enemy that's swarming your trenches while you pray you survive the barrage down in your foxhole. And that is precisely what the Canadians had to do. As waves of PVA soldiers literally overran their forward platoons, they called for thousands of shells from the gunners of the 16th Field Regiment, Royal New Zealand Artillery, to be fired directly on their own trenches. This didn't happen just once. It happened 3 separate times. The shell bursts just devastated the attackers, while the Canadians hunkered down deep in their trenches. It was an unbelievable gamble that, in the end, saved them. By dawn, the impossible had happened. The relentless Chinese attacks had finally stopped. The Canadians had held Hills 677. And now, the full cost and the incredible impact of this battle was becoming clear. So let's just look at the raw numbers, because this is where the story becomes truly staggering. The entire Commonwealth Brigade had 59 killed. In stark contrast, they inflicted absolutely devastating losses on the attacking force. An estimated 6,000 Chinese soldiers were killed. I mean, it was just a completely lopsided, brutal blow. So you see, this tiny, outnumbered force had pulled off a massive strategic victory. Their stand at Kapyong didn't just hold a hill, it stopped the Chinese advance cold, in a really critical sector, and that disrupted their entire offensive. This one action was absolutely vital in preventing the encirclement of other UN forces, and ultimately it saved the capital of South Korea, Seoul. The story of Kapyong is just such a powerful example of how pure courage and resolve, against odds that seem impossible, can genuinely change the course of a war. And it kind of leaves us with this final thought to chew on. What is that unique mix of desperation and duty that can turn a brutal fight for survival into a legend that lasts forever?